Hello and welcome back to the FPL podcast by Fantasy Football Hub, where we are looking forward to game week 21, but mainly taking a look into our newly available and fresh second wildcard and when will be the best time for us to use it. To help us wade through the different scenarios, we have Adam Hopcroft, Andy Green, and who got the assists, Tom Cantle. So straight into it, and firstly, I would ask, since the chips have been a part of the game, Tom first, have you used your second wildcard earlier than the blanks and double game weeks?
No, I don't think I have actually. I think I've always viewed the wildcard as being a vital tool, I suppose, in navigating the end of the season. And for me, I think in prior seasons, I've always looked at it. I've always fancied it, Andy. I've always kind of said to myself, sorry, Andrew. I've always fancied it and thought to myself, if I jump on all these players now who I know are going to be pretty decent towards the end of the season, I can afford a really good team, which I think is probably going to get out of reach after a while. But every year I've looked at it, and every year I've kind of gone, no, you know what, I'm going to keep the wild card back and try to, conform to the herd, because a lot of the time you see the plans and you see how to navigate the double game weeks from like Ben Crellin, and that often has a good suggestion, a very logical and rational suggestion for where you should play the wild card. And each year I've kind of waited for that rather than taking things into my own hands and trying to navigate it. But that said, I know loads of good examples of people who have gone a little bit early, like my friend Neil Gupta, Goops FPL. He went early a couple of years ago when he was about 800k and ended up about 100k. So sometimes you do need to supercharge your team when everyone else is kind of saying, "Oh no, I'm not interested in that." Like often there is a case to kind of think, "Well, I want to do something different in order to try to climb the ladder," and that can definitely pay dividends sometimes.
Yeah, for me, wildcards are one of the most fun things about this game. I'm sure many people have done kind of just sample wildcards, not thinking of pressing the button, but just to kind of say, look, what could I have in my team, and how do I get there if I don't wildcard?
What's your personal experience, Andy, in wildcard? Would you say that you've come out in profit, or would you say that it has done much effect or negative output? Or
I think overall, yeah. I think one season I've done the early wild card because my team was a total mess. But generally, I wait for the double game weeks that come later in the season. But I guess it all depends whether your team is needing a full refresh or whether you can get to certain players. For example, we know that the Liverpool double game week's coming up, and then there's likely to be one in game week 29, I think, if Leicester get all the way to the final of the cup. So that might be an interesting time. But yeah, I think overall, I think that I'm surprised, people tend to look at it as a kind of, okay, is it a panic button or is it a kind of, okay, I can plan my team ahead? And I think with some hits and some good team management, you can probably get to fairly close to what your wildcard team would be.
And how about yourself, Adam? Have you had good success with your second wildcard, using it around the chips?
Yeah, I would. I think I have, yeah. But I would, going back to the original point, I wouldn't be adverse to using it earlier if my team was in a real mess and I thought it would help me get up the ranks. I think this season, I think there were a lot of decent options in the majority of the positions. So I think your team would have to be in some sort of state to press the button now. It'd be interesting. I haven't looked at it yet, but you've mentioned Ben Crellin, to see how things are going to pan out this year, because I think last year was a pretty unique and challenging set of circumstances with how the game weeks worked out for the doubles. So I don't know if it's going to be quite as challenging to navigate this year without it. So that's probably one for Ben to answer, unless any of you guys have got any idea.
I did have a look, and according to Ben, this is all Ben's work. It's not my own work, of course. But basically, what it seems like is the TC is ideally suited to that Liverpool West Ham double game week. There's one big blank, as we get every year, and then all of those kind of games look like they're going to comfortably go into a big double game week in game week 37. So that would suggest to me that TC, free hit for the blank, and maybe bench boost for double game week 37, are the logical use of the chips. It's quite straightforward this year, I suppose, in some ways. The one that doesn't pin down is the wild card. You can use the wild card whenever you want, I think, within that context, but we don't know yet. It's a fair caveat to say. We don't know kind of how it's going to spin out. There may be an ideal time to use it, and we're going to talk about some fixtures later, I know. But because there's no, unlike last season, we had to there was an extra sort of blank, wasn't there? And we had to use the wild card as a way to, well, didn't have to, but we could have used the wild card as a way to navigate that. It doesn't look like that's going to happen this season, so it could be that one's where there's going to be some variation.
I think
the interesting thing there is that most people tend to wait for the double game week, wildcard the week before, and then bench boost during that double game week. And this season, if it is, they look at what Ben was saying, that it's looking like kind of double game week 37, which actually is interesting because if you essentially build your team on the wild card around this double game week, then you don't really have kind of a whole host of fixtures that you're going to miss out on. So, for example, say, I don't know, I haven't looked at the fixtures, but say Liverpool and Man City have some really tough fixture or a tough fixture afterwards, you can probably make a more balanced wild card team. Whereas I think what happens is with the double game week, the wild card around double game week is that people end up filling their team with players that they would never have just because they've got a double game week coming up. So potentially this season, although there's only one game left, it might be sensible to wait, and therefore you can fill your bench with players that you probably wouldn't have otherwise, because you've only got one more game to play, basically.
I think one of the challenges with double game week 37, I think that's actually quite a negative thing for FPL, because what will typically happen, the weaker teams fighting relegation will have something to play for. You might have a couple of teams going for Champions League, but it's just got rotation written all over it, and we can fall into that trap of people playing at best 1.5 games. So I think going back to what Tom said, would you get the best use of your wild card in game week 36 if that's what people are planning to do? Maybe it's actually going a lot earlier after the blank game week, so you can maybe get the benefit of 7 or 8 matches towards the back end of the season. Because I think that one game week where there will be loads and loads of rotation, it's difficult to predict. It's almost like not far off the equivalent like we've had around Christmas, because players are burnt out, some have got nothing to play for. So I think what Tom said has got some merit. Maybe going early on might not be a bad idea.
I'd also add in there as well is it's highly likely that Liverpool would have won the league then as well, and if Liverpool and or Man City have done well in the Champions League, I think the semi-final is usually around game week 35 or 36. Just as an example, if Liverpool won the league, they're not going to keep sticking out Salah, Mane, Trent every single game if they've got those matches as well. So if you want to maximize the wild card, maximize the chip, you want the best players in the league to be playing 90 minutes. You don't, the worst case scenario is you play a bench boost and 4 or 5 of your premium players who you've spent over half your budget on are not playing as well. So I think that's the thing to think about as well with the later one. And another point I'd add as well is that in terms of things like overall rank in mini leagues as well, by wildcard in 36 and playing your bench boost in 37, if you're 100 points or more off your rivals at that time, I just think it's way too late as well. I think you're putting all your eggs in 1 or 2 baskets, in 37 and 38 to actually make up and win your league. Whereas if you do use it earlier, you've got a chance to gradually make headway into the lead rather than just hope something comes off. So the point.
I think it ultimately it's down to how your team looks, because if you're in a situation, I don't think many people are, but you don't have a way to get 3 of the decent Liverpool assets ahead of this double game week, and if that Leicester double game week in 29 is, I think it's Norwich and Villa, that's very attractive. So if you don't have your team in a position for those, then the early wildcard makes total sense to me.
Okay, so if we look at the fixtures from the Hub fixture ticker then, from game week 21 to 38, we have some really interesting fixture runs here for every team. So I haven't put in the fixture runs for Liverpool and Man City because basically they're fixture proof, but I have put the kind of good runs between 5 and 9 sort of games for the rest of them. Tom, have you got any kind of thoughts on this and where it kind of impacts our thoughts on using the second wildcard?
There's quite a few strategies you can definitely employ here. One is the fabled dead ending kind of strategy. So we mentioned obviously that you're going to want to get triple Liverpool. You're going to probably want maybe Fabianski from West Ham, maybe even Antonio if you're trying your luck. You know, David Moyes is definitely going to get more crosses going over, isn't he? Once he takes charge of West Ham properly. But maybe around that sort of time, you could be looking at maybe kind of building your team up for that particular time frame. In that double, and then kind of after that, thinking, well, all right, I'm going to take advantage of the fact that there are a few very, very good fixtures coming up. For like Southampton, you could get Ings. For Sheffield United, they run into a decent fixture on as we've got circled here. And you know, as you mentioned a minute ago, Liverpool, Man City are always going to be a part of your team. But stuff like anticipating that, you know, Leicester may well, without the European commitments from game week 27 onwards, have a decent little run there, and they could be challenging, you know, to consolidate into second place, maybe try to keep City off their tails in third. So you mentioned motivation, and that will become a huge sort of part of how we analyse things going forward, especially as we get towards the end of the season. Picking out kind of times like that and picking out fixture swings. Like Leicester and Wolves, for example, 27-28, that looks quite good to me as a time to kind of think, okay, I'm going to repurpose my team to try to get some profits, I suppose, from those good fixtures. However, you know, we need to probably see how the end of the season is going to land by then. But, you know, I think it's around game week 30, 31, we tend to have the complete picture. And I think that would be probably when people kind of hold off to. So if you do go early, there's definitely an opportunity there because other people will be holding on to that last moment. You'll just have to take a few more hits and probably have to be a bit cleverer in terms of the players you pick up in order to navigate it without the kind of the fail-safe of the wild card behind you.
How about yourself, Andy? Is there anything there that kind of that catches your eye in terms of fixture swings?
Well, I always look for the short term, really, especially if people listening to this are thinking of wildcarding ahead of 24. Everton for me, DCL obviously starting to bang the goals in, and Richarlison supplying. So that's definitely probably, if I was wildcarding in 22, for example, I'd wait till after that Man City fixture, bring in both of those. City, I mean, I know that's got Tottenham there as a kind of semi-difficult fixture, but for me, that's looking at their defence and the way Man City play with the wingers, that is almost like an easy fixture. So I'd be obviously heavyweight on Liverpool with a double. We can talk about the Salamani versus Trent, Robbo, you know, the two mids versus the two defence for a while, I guess. But you'll certainly be looking at a triple Liverpool there, probably double Man City, if not triple, and probably double Everton attack, really, for me, in that, with Fabianski in goal. I probably would look at Antonio as well. I think he has been performing well. He's rested the last game as well. Their fixtures aren't too bad. Obviously, the double game week's not great, but you know, he's a player that has performed over the years and can score, can assist, can score a lot of headed goals. So I'd definitely look at Antonio and Fabianski for the double up.
How about yourself, Adam? Is there anything there which strikes a chord with you?
Not massively. I think there's. I just think there are loads of really, really good options this year, and I don't think I'd necessarily put it down to fixture swings. I think maybe that's something I'd look at the first wild card. For me, it's just the state of your team, and there's going to be so many. You know, I think the FA Cup might throw up a few shocks. Hopefully, Villa will upset Leicester, so that'll be, you know, mess up people's game week at 28 plans. So I for me, I'm not necessarily, I wouldn't wildcard based on the below fixture swings. I think the people have mentioned some good fixtures coming up for the likes of Everton. Obviously Liverpool have got the double, but it's not enough to make me tempted to wildcard yet. But I'm quite keen to see what our template wildcard would be.
Yeah. What about Adam? So, say for example, you were ranked at the moment about 1.5 million. You're behind the curve on the template, so you're just bringing the players now that everyone else has got. For example, what would your thinking be then in terms of an earlier second wild card?
Yeah, I'd be tempted then. It would like my team would have to be in quite far away from where I would want it to be for me to consider it. So probably no Liverpool, not having, you know, I suppose having fires to put out for the whole squad. I would wait at the moment. I think a good time to do it will be after the first blanks for the FA Cup that have come up. I think that will give us more information. So I wouldn't do it at the moment unless my team was in a mess.
Okay, I suppose the thing that strikes out at me here is for game week 24 and 25. Obviously, for 24 we have the Liverpool and West Ham double, but also for 25 there's a lot of teams a lot of teams that will have lesser owned players, such as teams like Burnley, Newcastle, Everton, Sheffield United, even Arsenal at that point. Crystal Palace still have a good run of fixtures. Even Villa, they all have big fixture swings. So I think if you are kind of struggling and looking to make up rank by going different, I think that 24, 25 early wildcard jump nose is an idea. I'm not saying to do it before anyone jumps on all those players, but if you are in dire straits and just looking to go different away from the template, that is definitely an idea. And just to touch on Adam's point, so my fellow Welshman at Sky player in FPL, so he played FPL last year the way he plays the Sky game, and he used his second wild card in accordance with how they use it in Sky, and he used it in game week 27 or 28, Adam, which is when you were kind of mentioning then about around stuff, and he actually finished 41st overall. So and he also used his triple captain on Sane in game week 25. So and he attested to his second wildcard being used at that time. It took away all the kind of drama and stress and decisions of who to take out in place of who to put in, for his like free hit team and bench boost team, because I've done it, my personal experience over the last 2 or 3 years, I've taken away players who've scored single game week hat tricks to put in players like Troy Deeney and Wes Morgan, who have come away with 1 pointers. I'm sure we've all done that to some extent, but it seems to have hit me hard. And so this is why, for me personally, I'm definitely thinking about playing an earlier wildcard. And by earlier, no, I don't mean like next week, but potentially sometime between 24, 25 and 28 is what I'm thinking of doing mine, and try and jump on that curve ahead of everyone else. That curve of good fixtures, as you mentioned earlier, Tom, teams like Wolves and Leicester. So, a lot of other players will be planning for the blanks, and I'm planning for this and that and manoeuvring their team around that. I'll be trying to get ahead of the curve, so that'll be my preference there. There is also another example. So Luke Wilson, who is also a contributor for the Hub, used his wildcard early last year. I think he used it in game week 22 when he was 1.6 million, and he actually finished at 23k as well. So we've got some really good success stories of players who have used it early and not just gone for the chips. So I think it's down to circumstances. I think it's down to what your aims are. If you're in a mini league with not many in, with cash involved, for example, you're just focusing on that. If you're focusing on just overall rank or whatever it is, I just think you need to look at your second wildcard of when it will do your team the best chance of kind of optimizing points, and not in just a short period of time. I think that's my advice. Has anyone got anything else to add on to that?
Yeah, one of the things that's happened this season is the mid-price forwards have performed. If you think about Ings, Jimenez, Callum Wilson for a short period of time, I guess. Therefore, the premium strikers, I'm thinking of Kane, Aguero, and Aubameyang. Aubameyang's obviously scored in the last 2 games, but there hasn't really been a desperate need to jump on those strikers. So that if one or maybe 2 of those strikers start to really perform, going around decent fixtures, etc., you could see people starting to switch towards those and really changing up their team. Because right now, most teams probably have one mid-price forward and then Vardy, I would say. So, right
Do you
now...
know what? You're talking about most teams, Andy. My main mini league, I think everybody has Kane, so it's really interesting.
Really?
Yeah, and a lot of them captained him the last 2 game weeks, which has been a little bit frustrating. But I was quite interested looking at some of the leagues that I'm in, and the one that I compete most in, and I've won year on year. I'm actually about 6th or 7th this year, and looking at the teams, Kane is in almost every single team, which I found quite interesting. And obviously, it didn't help me in the last few game weeks.
No, of course, yeah.
I'd agree with you on the whole. I think there's obviously. I don't think they. I don't think it's necessarily that they haven't performed, but I would say that, like you said, the mid-price strikers really have stepped up their game this year, which probably didn't happen last year.
Okay, so moving on then, I put some polls earlier on Twitter. I asked the masses, has using your second wild card generally gained you points, not had much effect, or lost you points? And it's also quite interesting, actually. So gained you points was 37.8% of the vote. Not had much effect was 45.8%, and lost you points was 16%. So in terms of that result, it seems that just over a third of teams actually think that using this second wildcard has actually had a positive impact on their team. And the second one there, I asked, when do you generally use your second wildcard? The first week or two, when I need it, or around the chips. The first week or two was 11.9%. When I need it was 42.4%, and around the chips was 45.7%. So, around kind of 89% of teams there either use it. I'd say they're between game week 25 and 38, around the period for the chips. Tom, have you got any kind of observations there that stand out, anything of interest?
Yeah, I do. So I think in terms of the negative perception of using the second wild card, I mean, what's that, 84, 40, 50... Sorry, my math's terrible today, which doesn't bode well for the work I was doing earlier. 61% of people saying basically that the wild card has not had a good effect, as you said. That's pretty interesting, isn't it? And then if you link that to the second answer, which is that contextually just under half of people use it around the chips, does that mean that, I guess, a lot of people are kind of following the herd strategy, and with the wild card as well? Like, if you're just doing what everybody else is doing, especially if you're consolidating in the upper echelons and you're using your wild card defensively, as it were, is it that surprising that people are kind of thinking, well, actually, using that wild card wasn't particularly exciting because all I've done is just got the same team that everybody else in FPL Twitter has got. So I've got the same points that everybody else in FPL Twitter has got. So the net effect of me using my wildcard is basically zero. I've stopped kind of tightening the points bleed because everybody else is wildcarded to the same team. But again, you're using your wildcard just for quite a kind of hygiene reason rather than using it for an exciting reason. So I'm not really too surprised that the perception, the reflection of that kind of experience is fairly kind of neutral or even negative, because really every time I've done it in the past, apart from last year where I kind of did it a little bit differently, I've copied everyone for good reason, because it is a very logical route to go through. No disputing that. It's just that the net impact of your wildcard is basically meh because everyone else has done what I've done.
Yeah, I'm surprised actually that the answer to I'm surprised that around the chips was only 46.8. If you'd asked me to guess what in the second wildcard would be used, and I guess this went out on Twitter, so therefore it's that Twitter FPL community, I would have put that somewhere in the region of 60%. Now, maybe the first couple of answers there are linked in the sense that people do need it and they play it in the first week or two. So there is perhaps that element to it. But yeah, I thought most people would have used it around the chips. Obviously, of course, an injury over the last few seasons could have caused them to force them into using it. And with regards to the points, I think as Tom said, I think a lot of players tend to do it around the same time, and therefore the marginal gain is reduced. I would say that if anyone out there is thinking of playing an early wildcard, you really have to think about, I put a poll out there saying, what did it gain you? And the answer came somewhere in the region of 25 to 30 points, as in, over what they thought they would have got a gain of 25 to 30 points over what they expected. However, you've also got to bear in mind how many hits you're going to need to take in those double game weeks leading up to the double game weeks to ensure that you have the right players for those double game weeks. So an early wildcard, you have to bear in mind, the the gains you might make, but then also the hits you might have to take further down the line to get those key double game week players. Now, obviously, if that double game week, the key double game week, ends up game week 27, as Andrew said earlier, you know, the likes of Mane and Salah might not feature in both games, or even in either game if they've already tied up the league by then. So it's going to be an interesting end to the season basis what we have here.
And what do you think, Adam? Is that are those results surprising to you?
I never know what to expect from polls on Twitter, to be honest. Every time I ask when I'm 50-50 on a player, the result comes back pretty much close to 50-50. So I'm not, and I think in all honesty, I'm not massively surprised by it. I just think you've got to use it when you need to use it. And it sounds quite obvious, but if your team is in a mess, you know, irrespective of whether it's game week 21 or game week 35, I think there's a strong case for using your wild card, and I think that's what it's there for. I think if you use it early, there are ways to navigate through the double game weeks, which don't sound as challenging as last year. So, yeah, I'm not massively surprised by that, to be honest.
Okay.
So I was going to say, like, one more thing as well is don't forget that a lot of the time the people who write the plans through the double game weeks are people who are extremely hit averse. A lot of the time you'll notice that stuff is done basically to say, okay, you can absorb a hit, you can roll here, you can roll here. A lot of the time we are very worried about taking hits, especially when everybody else is going to be wildcarding whatever, but it's not the be all and end all. So if you do decide to go early and you're being put off by the fear of, I might have taken -8 more than everybody else, just look at the net gain that you could potentially get, and it could be an opportunity for you.
One thing I am interested in, so Andy, obviously you finished third overall last year. How did you use your chips, and what impact did they have at the time?
It was pretty much in line with Ben Crellin's strategy, really. Changed it up a bit this season with the triple captain in week 1, as we've discussed on the pod earlier. But yeah, it was pretty much in line with the kind of standard chip strategy of wildcarding before the double game week late on in the season. I can't remember which game week it was, and then bench boosting into that. So nothing done really differently, although every season's different with the fixtures. So I can't say that anything was done differently. The real differential was the captaincy picks, I think, and obviously nailing them. Been very hard this season, but I think that was the key differential, is looking, to get significantly up the ranks, is really just looking at certain games, certain fixtures, and saying, right, this is where I'm going to go ahead against the herd and captain someone different, and then it pays off and you get a significant jump rank.
Okay, so in conclusion, gents, and please correct me if this is wrong, I think we're kind of agreeing that people should be looking to use this second wildcard when their teams need it, not necessarily around the chips, not necessarily really early because your rank is not amazing, but when you actually feel that your team is reaching a dead end, you're treading water, you're not getting anywhere, and your team needs a freshen up. Is that about right? Is there anything kind of other than that stands out?
No, that's good.
Okay, so for all those people whose teams are in a bit of a mess or who do want to change, what we're going to do now is we're actually going to create, between the four of us, the best game week 21 wildcard team. So if we just hop to my team, I'd be very, very careful not to press the wildcard button or press confirm or anything else. So for those listening who are not looking on video, we're on my team on YouTube. I have cleared down my team. The only players I've kept in are Trent Alexander-Arnold and Kevin De Bruyne. I assume none of you guys are going to violently disagree with those kind of essential picks or close to essential picks. So where do we go first after this, guys? Who are the players?
I think the ones that I would say straight away, I think Mane 100%, and I messed up not bringing Mane back in over Salah, but I think his form this season, I posted something earlier on Twitter, when him and Salah have both started the games this season, I think Mane's on 105 points, Salah on 85. Mane has 5 double figures, Salah has 2. If you look at the form away from home is where it probably, because Salah and Mane are neck and neck at home, but away from home, Salah's got like 35 points. I think he's only played 7 or 8 matches, but you've got a number of other players ahead of him, whereas Mane's fairly consistent. So I think Mane goes in. I think Vardy as well. I think you struggle not to put him in. It's just consistency and the way Rodgers' teams play against the majority of the league. They have so much possession and they almost put the ball on a plate for Vardy. So I think he's a good captain options in some of the weeks coming up. So I think for me, straight away, they're the two really, really obvious ones. And then just because I can see Lundstrom yellow flagged at the top, be interesting to get everyone else's thoughts on that, but I'd be tempted to put him in as well.
Yeah, that price, I mean, obviously you got him early, but regardless whether you got him at 4.6 or 5, I think he should be in there as an attacking defender. I think of him more as a kind of central midfielder rather than a defender with a clean sheet bonus. Goalkeeper-wise, I think if you're wildcarding now, i.e. game week 21, I think you've got to be looking at Fabianski with Bournemouth. Sheffield United don't score a lot of goals, and then you've got the double up. So save points there. That would be if I was wildcarding that.
So on that, on goalkeepers, I think Josh from who got the assist from Always Cheating this morning. Yeah, losing the plot here. So from Always Cheating posted that one of his strategies that had worked well was having rotating goalkeepers, and I think he was up. I think it actually works out. He's up about 20 points versus set and forget. Now, I'd done some similar maths earlier in the season, and I do think it works out net as 1 point per week on average, and it did similar last season. So I suppose the challenge is a lot of them are zoomed up from the original 4.5, but I do think we miss a trick sometimes with goalkeepers, because I think the set and forget is the easy choice. But I actually think there's if you can get the pairings right, and you'd have to look at the fixtures, I think rotating goalkeepers could be an option for the rest of the season, particularly as well. What you've got to factor in is that most people will want a bench boost. So having two playing goalkeepers is probably important. As to who they are, it's very, very difficult to say because you don't know who the doubles will be. But I think having two playing keepers is pretty important.
Yeah, and a wild card is a good reset of the team to be able to shift them around. A lot of people are playing with the 4 million goalkeeper that you've got there, Stecklenburg, who doesn't really play. I think the other player that on a wild card, if you don't already have him, is Traore. You've got there, so you probably bring him back into your team. I think at 5.5 million, looking very attacking in a very attacking team. Rested last week, some great fixtures coming up: Watford, Newcastle, Southampton. So that price point.
I don't know. I don't think it's essential. So because I'm in an R in, I've got two strategies, and one of them is to bring in Traore this week, and he does look great. But then I think with the availability of the cheap attackers at the moment, I think you've almost got a choice between something like Rashford and Traore, or Ings and Martial, or Richarlison, that sort of level. And it's just which you prefer out of those two. Because at the moment, it's much easier for me. I've got Rashford. It's much easier for me to have Rashford and Traore. But then when I think about it, maybe Ings and Martial is a better combination. But be interested to get the thoughts.
Do you think Ings is going to keep scoring a goal every single game and get a back pass like he did against?
Do you know what? I do. I think he will. I don't think he will keep up the. I think he will get close to matching Rashford, and the reason I think it, I watched him at Villa Park. He is so opportunistic that it's not. I don't think it is luck, and I know everyone will say that. He's constantly anticipating stuff. He's always in the right position. His movement is exceptional. And his finishing is very, very good. But I think it's because he gets fairly straightforward chances. So I think Ings, I haven't got him, and I'm kicking myself that I didn't bring him in a while ago. But I think he's hard to look past because he will, if Southampton score, it will be Ings, and he will get free bonus. And it's effectively becoming, because Southampton don't keep clean sheets, he almost certainly puts himself in bonus points every time he scores. So I think he should. I'm frustrated that I don't have him, but I think he's so hard to look past, and he's capable of scoring in any fixture as well. So I'm a big Ings fan, even though I don't have him.
Ings in. So who else in defence, guys?
I think with Sionchu, I don't know when you got him in for, but really over the next few fixtures, now those hard games are out of the way. He's such an ideal, do you bench him, do you play him sort of guy. I think basically all the way until the end of the season, they've only got Man City, Chelsea, and Arsenal. I think is where they play. So that's yeah. He's always going to have a role in your team, whether he's got a double game week or not.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm guessing. I don't know when you got him in 4.5 or something like that.
For 4.8,
Yeah.
I don't think you'll get much. I think that's a good option.
Yeah, that's well alright, isn't it? One I want to highlight is Kiko Firmino. I feel like I and many others, including James Correll, have a yearly dalliance with Kiko Firmino at 4.2 at Watford. It seems like Nigel Pearson has overtaken the next Villa manager, Sam Allardyce, in his ability to shore up defence relegation fodder. But I mean, Watford have been quietly really readdressing that sort of whipping boys label. I think we were all giving them for quite a while, especially under Pearson.
Do you think he's a better option than Kabasele? Because I looked at Kabasele and nearly bought him in, and I think he's been very. He's going to play every game, and he is so key to it. So it's just whether he's a better option because he's not much.
It's because Yamat's out, and because like every year every year he's a bit of a bonus hog for Mina. I remember kind of a couple of years ago, I think it was like over 40% of his points were bonus points or something ridiculous like that. So remember we profiled him for a 4.5, which one's the best? But I think he is one in your Arsenal, along with Rico, along with Charlie Taylor at Burnley. We mentioned earlier on that game week 25 onwards, Burnley's fixtures turn, and having a 4.2 on the bench, you handle it. Why not? And there's quite an array of those sort of cheap players at the moment. And for that spot, the one that Kiko's currently in, which is one of the defensive slots, and Pereira, I'd advocate having two cheap players there, and then kind of pushing the money forward, if that makes sense. Because I think at the moment there are still, as we've mentioned so many times in this pod, so many options going forward that really the defence right now, I mean, is there a case for someone like Aurier, Clancy Aurier? Not really.
Well, I think that this is a really good time to discuss who is the third Liverpool player.
Yeah, it's coming up. I can see
this is where it's going. And for me, I own Salah and Trent, but I would say that it isn't Salah. I would say it's either Firmino or Robertson. And the reason why is I just think that having quarter of your budget or best part in two players is too much. And I just do not see, I mean, the away games as well, Wolves and West Ham have got a double. Salah's just not great in those type of fixtures away from home, in my opinion. And I think Firmino could be an absolute. I mean, I think the majority of his goals have come away from home. I think Firmino could be a really, really, a bit of a. He will probably be a differential. But the way Liverpool, I think the big key for me is since Alisson has come back, he's arguably the best goalkeeper in the world, and he has made such a difference confidence-wise to Liverpool. And I think Robertson is probably the way that I would go. And I just think that he'll get bonus every time they keep clean sheets. I think that Liverpool will push to... I think they'll start getting 1 and 2-0 wins. You saw yesterday was a very good example and their fixtures are lined up for close wins. Spurs, United, Sheffield United. And last season, they kept a lot of clean sheets in those tight games. So I would say... I would probably go Robertson. I think there's a possible case for Firmino. I think if Salah was on absolutely incredible form in every game, I would put him in, but I don't think he warrants 12 million. And I think Robertson has got every chance of matching or beating him in the fixtures that they've got. Yeah. And factoring in, then you don't have a captaincy dilemma as well. And it hurts me to say it because I currently have Salah.
I think I'm going to make an executive decision there, looking at budget and the fact that I also want to fill the third striker spot with Calvert-Lewin. So
you've got to do that.
So I'm going to make a decision there, and we're going to put Calvert-Lewin in that third striker spot alongside Ings and Vardy, and we're going to put
that gives
Robertson
us three spots left, doesn't it?
Three, but it also blocks the Salah move in. So is anyone massively against that? Because we've now got Robertson, Trent, and Mane.
Well, does that mean that you've got Salah right now, and I think Mane was your pick. So does that mean you're going to switch to Mane, or you're just going to?
I didn't have Salah. I didn't have Salah or Mane.
So I do. I've been looking at this today. So I think the opportunistic time to do it is next game week. So I'm not going to do it. I've got 2 frees. I was tempted to do it for the Sheffield United game because I think I like the way Mane plays. He's always making those late runs into the box. But Salah's home form has been very good this year, and I think it'd be silly. I think it wouldn't be the right time to do it. So I'm tempted to do it for the away fixture versus Spurs. But I think I've said it all along, and I think the only reason I didn't do it is because I felt it was going backwards instead of moving forwards when I took Son out. So I should have gone back to Mane, ideally.
Thing to say here though is that because everybody, like, if you're wildcarding now, you want to try to do something that other people are going to struggle to get to if they're just using free transfers and hits and stuff, right? I think that pretty much everybody can get to TAA and Robbo, or TAA and Van Dijk, who'd probably be my shout there. Just thinking of Laporte last year as an example of a player who can do very well if they're nailed on to play. The benefit of going with Salah and Mane, I've got Salah and Mane, by the way, so I'm selling my own book a little bit, is the fact that other people are going to really struggle to do that. I've heard it on WGTA this week, for example. Not, I mean, it wasn't on the pod, so I'm pushing it a little bit. But I heard that described as doing surgery to your team to try to fit those players in. And Nick was saying, well, it's really easy for me to get to double defence. So if you're making a wild card, do I want to do what everybody else is going to do anyway? Or do I want to do something a little bit different to try to, go against the odds? As Andy was saying earlier, betting against where the herd's going to go. If the herd's going to go on double defence, why not go double midfield? I know we've got all the precautions, and obviously you are spending a lot of your budget, but that's what you're kind of leaning into, isn't it? If you're saying, right, I'm going to go with Mane and Salah, I'm not going to go with Robertson, I'm going to keep TAA and have that holy trinity. That's where the advantage lies, isn't it?
I get what you're saying.
You guys would do this because you are all that sort of player.
No, I get what you're saying, but for me, it's irrelevant as to where the herd are going or where they're not going, or whether it's a differential or not. It's quite simply, it sounds very cliche, but who will get the most points? Mm-hmm. And I think that I just think he's too expensive for what he's producing at the moment. He's capable of big returns, but I'm not sure they'll come away to West Ham and away to Wolves. I think it's more likely to be Mane, and I think Liverpool have got more. I think Robertson has got as much chance as matching him. I think Firmino could be, like I keep going back to him, I think he could be the one that everyone misses, because I don't think many people will go for him. So I think if you're talking about doing something different, I think Firmino's a better option personally. Maybe have Rashford up until the game week before and then swap to Firmino.
I'd also mention here as well, though, if we were, just for example, to take out Robertson and put in Salah, I know, this is kind of an imaginary team, but it would put this team massively out of budget as well. So you can't have your De Bruyne's, your Vardys, your Trents, Mane, De Bruyne and Salah. So we do need to think about that. I think
the thing is, when would you captain, if you've got Mane as well, when would you captain Salah? And I don't even think you'd do it in the double game week. I wouldn't personally. And I think for 12 million, it's just too, I think it's too much. I do get your point, because that could be the ultimate differential, and it could work out well. But I think if you're wildcarding, you want to set your team up for the long term, and it's not just about the Liverpool fixtures.
I know. I mean, that Magnus Carlsen fella's had Salah and Mane for quite a while, hasn't he? He's doing all right. But no,
there will be people that are doing well. There will be people that are doing well with that. But I don't know. I was looking at it today in length, and Salah was coming out bottom, and it's like I said, it's annoying for me because I've got Salah, which I didn't want that to be the case. But when I was looking at the numbers and trying to make teams work, the team with Salah and Mane was probably the weakest overall. It's obviously going to backfire, and he's going to have a very, very strong run of form. But even watching him yesterday, he doesn't look. I mean, he doesn't. For me, he doesn't look clinical at the moment. And he had
the first 30 minutes yesterday, he looked pretty good, but then it seemed to fade off.
But he had a very, very good chance, and he missed it. Whereas Mane had one sniff all game, and he scored. And I think even flicking back to the Leicester game, Mane had two very, very good chances that on another day would have scored. Whereas Salah, I don't know, he went round the keeper and missed one, didn't he? But other than that, again, there wasn't loads.
One thing I note, though, is that Salah's positioning in the last game was pretty much centre forward, certainly for the first half of the game, which, as we know, he's more dangerous with. Listen, I think, as Tom said, I think you've really got to. Most people wildcarding now need big jump up the ranks. What does that come from? I take Adam's point about setting yourself up for the rest of the week, of the season rather. But really, if you're going to be wildcarding now, then you probably need.
Can I make a suggestion? Why don't we do two? Quickly mess around with it now. What the option is with Salah and what the option is with Robertson, and then we'll actually have a like for like comparison.
You have a lift coming in about 2 minutes.
So Salah's in now. So Salah's in now, and we've got 13 million for a reserve keeper. Bearing in mind, Adam wants a decent reserve keeper. We've got a defender spot and a midfield spot, so it doesn't work.
Yeah, I think that's the downside, isn't it, of the rotation?
Well, even if you put Steckelmer back in, what would you have left for two players? You'd have.
So we've got 9 million. You have like a 4.
So you could have. You can have a bench fodder defender, can't you? And then
you can have Dendoncker and the Varalli as the nominated kind of, or whatever, 4.4 Dale Stevens, something like that, and then the leftovers you spent. How much do we get left for the final slot then?
Use Cantwell just as an example because he's 4.8, and then we have a 4.6. So yeah, so if we
do that, it's okay.
Yeah. So if you were for Salah and Mane, the team would look something like Fabianski, 4 million keeper, Firmino, Webster, Soyuncu, Alexander-Arnold and Lundstram, Mane, Salah, De Bruyne, Cantwell and Traore, and then Vardy, Ings and Calvert-Lewin up front. If we were to take out Salah and put in Robertson. So guys. There he is. Yeah. We can then, if we take out...
I think you can keep Cantwell, because you want a fodder player.
Well, you want a nominated bench.
You want a bench, you want a bench player. So then you've just helped you with your keeper, I suppose. So you'd have
maybe a Maddison in there as well for the final midfield slot. They've got good fixtures.
I like Maddison, yeah.
Or
Son.
Just leave it. Yeah, Son maybe. 0.1. So
that's Son. Yeah, that's Son.
Out your backup keeper idea though.
So if we were to go with just Mane or Salah for our listeners, the team would look like Fabianski and 4 million keeper, Firmino, Robertson, Soyuncu, Alexander-Arnold and Lundstram, Mane, Cantwell, De Bruyne, Son and Traore, Vardy, Ings and Calvert-Lewin. So I think my observation there would be that just looking, off Twitter, I suppose, mainly, there's not many teams that are too far away from that. So I suppose my general observation would be from there, if you're looking to wildcard now and you're not too far away from that team, is it worth using a wildcard for 3 or 4 or 5 sort of subs? I don't think so. So I would leave it a few weeks. It's my kind of initial observation there. Any other thoughts on that, guys?
No.
Right.
So talking of blanks and double game weeks, Fantasy Football Hub has got you completely covered. We have the ultimate guide on how to navigate the blanks and double game weeks. We also have Ben Krellin's planning spreadsheets and FPL Jossie's fixture planner, all amazing tools that all Hub contributors used to navigate through the double game weeks and maximize chip use. And finally, one last call for the free £1,000 prize second half Fantasy Football Hub League. Simply head over to Fantasy Football Hub _HQ Twitter page or the Fantasy Football Hub website to sign up. All scores start at 0 for game week 21, so everyone has the same chance to win, and it's absolutely free to enter. The closing time is 11:30 a.m. on the 1st of January, so head on over there for a chance to win £1,000 with prizes for second and third place also. That's it from us. We'll be back next week. We'll be looking ahead to game week 22. Andy, the current thoughts on when you'll be using your second wildcard?
Well, at the moment, given I'm aiming for probably the Mane Salah double up for this double, it will not be in the next couple of weeks. I think I'll probably be looking to see if I can pick up, given the absence of Leicester in my team, I've only got Vardy. If Leicester get that double game week in 29, that might be interesting to me. Other than that, I'll probably wait for 37.
Okay, and where can we find you, Andy?
At FPL Fantasy Guide.
Okay, and the same question to Adam. Adam, when will you be using your second wildcard?
I'll be honest, I don't know at this stage, but it'll probably be after game week 30 when we get a bit more news on what's going to happen in the latter part of the season. But I'll probably do it fairly early around then, just to maximise the benefit in terms of the number of game weeks left. And you can find me at ahopcroft13.
Okay, and the same for you, Tom. Obviously, and with the knowledge that you'll be off travelling for a couple of months, do you even care when you're going to use your second wildcard?
No, I'm very tempted actually to play it to set me up for the rest until I come back. But I don't think I'll do that. I think I'm going to actually use the hit system in a juicy sort of move before New Year's and when I go away. But I think the wildcard at the moment, what I like to do as a parting tip is I like to, around kind of game week 26, 27, start to put a team together that you think is probably going to be the best one for the latter half of the season. Probably we'll get more information. We'll have questionable blank or probable blank here. They could have a double game week there, and you'll be able to kind of put a team together and just have a kind of an active draft in your mind. Keep an eye on the money, and if you get to the point where you think, oh god, this is looking to be my last chance to get hold of that team, go for it. I think that often I'm going to be doing it when my team needs it. I'd agree with that on the poll. And I think that's worked for me over the last couple of seasons, salvaging some pretty horrendous Christmases. And I may need to do that again this year from the auspices of being on travelling. So hopefully I won't have to use it before I get back. But if I do have to, I will. But yeah, hopefully it'll be probably after I get back from being abroad. And you can find me, well, you won't be able to find me January and February, but you can find Who Got the Assist at WTA_FPL. And I am the artist formerly known as Tom.
And obviously, the best of luck and a good health and safety and everything else, Tom, for your journeys. In terms of when I'll be using it, so I think I'm going to take inspiration from at Sky Player in FPL, who finished 41st last year. He set his team up very nicely for the latter part of the season, as per Tom's point. He set himself up around game week 27 and 28. So it wasn't specifically with any particular game week in mind, but it was the final sort of third of the season. So at the moment, that's my current plan. I'm not in a good place. I'm currently just over 1 million overall rank. So, that may change if I have a couple of stinking weeks now and end up further down. I may use it earlier, but my current plan is to use it around 27 or 28. My Twitter handle is @Fergie222. This video will be on the Fantasy Football Hub YouTube channel, with the podcast versions available in all major podcast libraries, including iTunes, SoundCloud, and Spotify. We hope it has helped you in terms of looking at your second wildcard and giving you a few ideas of do's and don'ts on when to use it. If you like what you hear, please like, share, subscribe, retweet. It all helps us get the word out and make sure you don't miss anything. And as usual, all comments and feedback are very welcome. Our Twitter handle is @FFH_HQ, and our podcast Twitter handle is @FFH_podcast. So please follow and feel free to ask us any questions. Our website is fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, where you will find everything you will ever need for fantasy football all under one roof, including player comparison tools, the fixture ticker, Opta stats, top player team reveals, and much, much more. We'll be back next week. In the meantime, we wish you a very happy new year, but more importantly, a great and rotation-free game week 21. And we bid you thank you and good night. Good night.